Philpot. "No," Leonora replied. "Where is he?" "In the drawing room. He says he won't have any tea." "You must remember, my dear, that your father has been through a great deal this last day or two." "So have all of us, as far as that goes," Rose stated ruthlessly. "However—" She turned away, shrugging her shoulders. Leonora wondered by means of what sad experience Rose would ultimately discover that, whereas men have the right to cry out when they are hurt, it is the whole business of a woman's life to suffer in cheerful silence. She sat with the girls during tea, drinking a cup for the sake of form, and giving them disconnected items of information about the funeral, which at their own passionate request they had been excused from attending. The talk was carried on in low tones, so that the rattle of a spoon in a saucer sounded loud and distinct. And in the drawing-room, John steadily perused the Signal, column by column, from the announcement of pink dominoes at the Hambridge Theatre Royal on the first page, to the bait of a sporting bookmaker in Holland at the end of the last. The evening was desolating, but Leonora endured it with philosophy, because she appreciated John's state of mind. It was the disclosure of the legacy of £250 to Fred Riley, and of the recent conditional revocation of that legacy, which had galled her husband's sensibilities, by bringing home to him what he had lost through Aunt Hannah's sudden death, and through the senile whim of Uncle Meshach to alter his will. He could well have tolerated Meshach's refusal to distribute Aunt Hannah's savings immediately, had the old man's original testament remained uncancelled. Once upon a time, Riley, a despised poor relation,
the offspring from an outcast of the family,
was to have been put off with £250, and the bulk of the Myatt joint fortune was to have passed in any case to John. The withdrawal of the paltry legacy, as shown in the codicil, was the outward and irritating sign that Riley had been lifted from his humble position to the level of John himself. John, of course, had known months ago that he and Riley stood level in the hazard of gaining the inheritance, but the history of the legacy, revealed after the funeral, aroused his disgusted imagination as it had not been roused before. He was beaten, and more important, he knew it now. He had the incensed, futile, malevolent, devil-may-care feeling of being beaten. He bitterly invited fate not to stop at half measures, but to come on and do her worst. And fate, with that mysterious responsiveness which often distinguishes her movements, came on. "Of course I might have expected it," John exclaimed savagely 2 days later, when he received a circular to the effect that a small and desperate minority of shareholders were trying to put the famous brewery company into liquidation under the supervision of the court. The shares fell another 5 in 24 hours. The Bursley Conservative Club knew positively the same night that John had got out as a ruinous loss, and this episode seemed to give vigorous life to certain rumours, hitherto faint, that John and his uncle had violently quarrelled at his aunt's funeral, and that when Meshach died, Fred Riley would be found to be the heir. Other rumours, that Ethel Stanway and Fred Riley were about to be secretly married, that Day would have been the owner of Prince but for the difference between guineas and pounds, and that the real object of Arthur Twemlow's presence in the Five Towns was to buy up the concern of Twemlow and Stanway, were received with reserve, though not entirely discredited. The town, however, was more titillated than perturbed, for everyone said that old Meshach, for the sake of the family's good name, would never, under any circumstances, permit a catastrophe to occur. The town saw little of Meshach now. He had almost ceased to figure in the streets. It knew, however, the Myatt pride, the Myatt respectability. Leonora sympathised with John, but her sympathy, weakened by his surliness, was also limited by her ignorance of his real plight, and by the secret preoccupation of her own existence. From the evening of the funeral, the desire to see Arthur again, to study his features, to hear his voice, definitely took the uppermost place in her mind. She thought of him always, and she ceased to pretend to herself that this was not so. She continually expected him to call, or to meet someone who had met him, or to receive a letter from him.